Steel Curtain Network.
Touchdown! Touchdown para Kaleb Johnson! El Monte Washington es arma. ¿Quién más? ¿Quién más? DJ Watt!
What's going on, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined only by Dave Schofield tonight. Brian Davis is out doing some shenanigans. I just listened to our intro. Thank goodness there was no Pickens in that little intro. We don't have to make any changes or anything like that. But Dave, welcome to the show. How's it going?
I completely forgot about it. I don't know. I don't know if the outro is going to be clean of that or not. This is going to be our first test of thinking about it. I mean, for the longest time, it was picking up Pickens, and now it's neither one of them are there anymore. Oh, we're going to be hearing that combination for years to come.
Yeah, that's what we once said. That's what we once said. But welcome everyone to the podcast. I want to give everyone a quick scheduling update. Next week, we are going to be on Wednesday, not Thursday. And the reason why is next Wednesday is when the schedule is released. I think it's released around 7 or 8 o'clock, Dave. I can't remember exactly the time, but we always do our preview show on that night so that we can give you the full break. We run through the whole schedule. We do our way too early predictions for the upcoming season. And then last I heard, Tate was talking to the Pump Your Brakes guys, and they're probably going to slide over to Thursday. So you'll still have a full slate of shows for you. But that was one thing I wanted to bring up. I don't want to talk a lot about George Pickens in this show. You've gotten a chance to talk about it. My Friday Let's Ride podcast, I talked about it. We did the breaking news podcast. Like, everyone's kind of gotten that opportunity. If we have questions in the live chat, maybe we'll answer some. But other than that, I think it's time to just kind of look forward to rookie minicamp coming up this weekend, which is what we're going to talk about in today's show, with highlighting third round running back Kaleb Johnson. Before we do that, there are some news nuggets I wanted to bring up. Dave, I mentioned the schedule. Tuesday, the NFL is releasing international games. Who do you think? There's been 2 teams rumored to be facing the Steelers in Dublin. It is the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Who do you think it's going to be? Do you have a hunch?
My hunch for the longest time was the Packers because of them doing the licensing thing. That's why I still think that the likely one. I know a famous Pittsburgh sports personality. I'm not calling him an insider. Although last year he did have the complete schedule.
Hey, you're talking about Andrew Filipponi. We can call him by name. He was spot on with the schedule stuff last year.
Absolutely. He 100% had the schedule last year. So it's not that he's always wrong or always right. But honestly, I thought Minnesota was a possibility. Here's what I think is interesting. How much of this do they like? Well, which one would cause more drama with Aaron Rodgers?
Exactly what I was thinking.
Which it could. I mean, they're like, well, if he's still wanting to go to Minnesota, maybe it's Minnesota. And honestly, I don't really want it to be Minnesota, because the last time the Steelers played a regular season international game, it was against the Minnesota Vikings.
In London,
it would be nice to be against a different opponent.
It was 2013. They started that year 0-4 on their way to 8-8. That was no fun.
And the Brian Suckup.
Yes.
Mr. Irrelevant is not irrelevant for Steelers fans, because if he could hit a 40-something yard field goal, the Steelers would have been in the playoffs that year.
I don't want to bring up that season. I don't want to bring up that season. I don't want to bring up anything about that year.
That was my first season going to games in Pittsburgh.
I believe it.
I had one outlier in Ben's rookie year, but that's when I started regularly going to games.
I was the NBC fan of the week that year when they hosted the Bears in Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. I think that was week 3. They lost. Jay Cutler and the Bears came in. Antonio Brown had an amazing catch at the back of the end zone. So I remember that season well. That was like the Jonathan Dwyer, Antoine Blake Steelers years. Just very odd times in Pittsburgh.
I was there against Detroit and Megatron. So we were both against NFC North opponents in Pittsburgh. And that was the one, like I said, it was the infamous I think Antonio Brown had like 2 second quarter touchdowns. All Detroit's points were scored in the second quarter of that game. It was an insane, amazing game.
Yeah.
So
you think Minnesota? You don't want to see Minnesota. You brought up the Rodgers. There's a lot of people out there, and this started with Colin Cowherd and Pro Football Talk, which is Mike Florio. He's kind of piggybacked it a little bit, that there's two rumors out there. One is that the Steelers are telling Rodgers to not sign until after the schedule is released, so that it doesn't impact their primetime games, as if the Steelers wouldn't get 5 primetime games anyways. But if he's not under contract, the NFL can't be like, well, we're going to do this, that, or the other, expecting him to be there, because he is going to draw attention, whether you love him or hate him.
Yeah.
Other side of it is that Aaron Rodgers wants to wait because he wants to see exactly what their schedule looks like and whether he wants to be a part of it. Do you believe any of this?
It's going to be really interesting if the schedule comes out and 2 weeks later, there's still no decision from Rodgers, then obviously it didn't matter at all. I could see it if you're going to say, hey, if you waited this long, let's wait and make sure that they lock in the schedule. Like Aaron Rodgers could say, I don't want them doing something special with the Steelers because of me, that then puts it in a weird situation. I don't. To me, the schedule's done. I don't think they're tweaking the schedule right now. Anyway, I think they have to have it figured out by this point. If they knew exactly what day they're going to release it, so they could always change the prime time games or whatnot, I guess, since they could even flex them during the season. But I can't say that there's no basis for that. But I definitely can't say that. Oh yeah, that's probably the reason either.
I will say this, that let's say Minnesota is the team in Ireland, that they wanted to have Green Bay, but they don't have the Aaron Rodgers factor. So they're like, we'll just put Minnesota there. Still be a good matchup. They've played overseas before. We're going to do that. I would bet a lot of money that the Green Bay game is going to be in prime time, whether Rodgers is there or not, because they're banking on him being there.
Yeah.
And so that's my takeaway, is that they're going to say, okay, we'll put Minnesota over there, but we're still making Green Bay, Pittsburgh primetime. And you could justify it because you have those two storied franchises. But we'll talk about that more next week as we get closer to the actual schedule release. Dave, I want to give you an opportunity. Do you want to say one more thing?
Yeah, I was going to say one last thing about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is more concerning to me than the opponent is the rumored date.
I heard week 4. It's not good.
Week 4 is not good. Week 4 is bad for the Steelers. Unless because it's in Ireland, it makes everything thrown out the window. You know what I'm saying? It's not the typical, kind of that moment of the season where the Steelers have kind of had the letdown just because, kind of like if you're ever on a diet or anything. And I know they talk about this on the show. If you ever watched Naked and Afraid, where they're doing survival stuff where they have to find their own food. Day 4 is always the key, getting through that with the mental stuff. That's why I think it's crazy that it's game 4 for the Steelers. But the fact that it would be so non-routine and so different than what they've experienced, then maybe we get something that's a little bit better. That might make it better that's week 4, because you can't just fall into the same old. But that's more concerning to me than the opponent.
Well, I really hope that whatever happens, whoever they play, whenever it is, doesn't matter. Please, for the love of all things holy, don't travel over on Friday like they did in 2013.
Go early.
Yes, go early. Let your body get active.
By then,
you can choose to have it or you can bypass it. It's up to the team, is what I heard. But so it's one of those things where it's like, they did that. I remember when they went to London, and the Minnesota Vikings, who they played in 2013, they traveled over early in the week. It was like as soon as they could. It might have been Monday, their day off, they traveled. Pittsburgh was like, we're staying in Pittsburgh. We'll travel on Friday. So you get there on Friday, you're jet lagged all day Saturday, and then you're supposed to play a game on Sunday. Like, that doesn't make sense. You have West Coast teams traveling to the East Coast with special schedules. You're going across an entire gigantic body of water multiple times. It's like, my gosh, can we just, hopefully they learn their lesson. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. All right.
No, you're exactly right. I also want to say one other thing. Andre, yes, I am a Steelers season ticket holder. That was a question of the live chat. If that's if I was a season ticket holder. I have been since 2015.
I wanted to give you an opportunity. You wrote this article today, Thursday, for SteelCurtainNetwork.com. You updated the salary cap after the George Pickens trade. Do you want to fill everyone in as to how much cap space they currently have?
Okay, well, I'm not bringing up my article. I'm bringing up my spreadsheet, because you know me, I'm a spreadsheet guy. I can get this all figured out. I have the Steelers cap space currently with George Pickens, who did save them, even after displacement a little more than $2.5 million. That I have the Steelers cap space is $34,261,575. And me doing my own calculations, I always do mine, and then I check the other sources. Many times this is true. That's the exact same number you get it over the cap right now. So it saved them a little bit, but to me, the move of George Pickens had nothing to do with money, unless you're talking about 2026 money. Right. So you can try to say a silver lining, but I know a lot of fans would say, yeah, that amount of money would have been worth keeping him. I'm still back and forth in that whole thing, but that's the update of the salary cap.
Okay. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, we're going to take, just like last week, we took an early break and then we really talked about the rookie after the break, and then we did trivia to end the show. I think the Steelers are going to try to address wide receiver in some shape or form before training camp. How they do that, that's up for debate. Whether it's a free agent, you're talking about Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper still out there, or whether you're talking about a potential trade. Dave, I want to ask you, if you were looking at everything in its whole, how do you think the Steelers, if they choose to, well, I guess maybe the question is, do you think they bring in another receiver? And if so, how do they do that?
I think you are correct that they're going to try. And I would not say before training camp. I would say they are going to try starting, let's see, what day do we do that breaking news? Wednesday, yesterday. Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's it seems like it's been such a whirlwind. It doesn't seem like it was yesterday. I think they started trying then. They might have even been trying before that. Jeff, they're going to try all the way up to the trade deadline. If they don't, they will continue to. They need to. They should. I remember being on the Breaking News podcast, not about the George Pickens trade, but about the DK Metcalf trade. And you and other people saying, oh, does this mean Pickens is gone? Pickens is gone. My biggest thing was, I'm like, if you trade George Pickens after acquiring DK Metcalf, you are right back to where you were last year. And right now, I feel like they are. And I know a number of people are frustrated because why didn't they take someone in the draft? Honestly, not having that second round pick really put a damper on them being able to do that. Was a third or fourth round pick going to be ready to step into a George Pickens role this year? No. But then I also get the idea of, well, hey, if is a third or fourth round pick next year going to be ready to step in next year? Do you have to wait another year? Yeah. I don't think even if they drafted someone this year, what is going to be the answer? They've got to sign somebody. They've got to do something. I know they're going to try. There's nothing with the salary cap that should be holding them back. It's not like the Steelers need cap room to sign TJ Watt. That's, if anything, going to lessen his. It sounds like if they sign Aaron Rodgers, he's not going to be killing their cap space. They've got to do something. Please don't go into the 2025 season with the same deficiency that you did in 2024.
Would you prefer them to just address the veteran free agent? Like I mentioned, those two players as the prime candidates, or would you prefer them to try and make a trade? A lot of people have been looking at Alan Lazard with the Jets because he has a relationship with Aaron Rodgers, who I still think is going to be the quarterback this year. Or some have talked about Romeo Doubs up in Green Bay, some other players up in Green Bay. What would be the ideal situation for you to acquire that player?
You asked the question if it would be better or if you're going to sign him in free agency or acquire him via trade. My answer is yes. I don't care which way. Get a good receiver. If you have to trade, my goodness, at least you're sitting with 12 expected picks in the next draft.
Yeah.
I mean, they traded a second for DK Metcalf in a draft that then you didn't pick again to the third round. I don't know about giving up a second for somebody, but my goodness, you already got a third for George Pickens. You potentially could get as many as 2 third-round comp picks, or you could get 0, because I've talked about that a bunch. There's way too much to bank on where they'll be. But I'm telling you, it's pretty confident that they're going to get 4 comp picks next year. The only question is, what rounds will they be? So with all that in mind, if you've got to use that to do something wide receiver this year, do it. If you think that your answer can be found in free agency as someone who's available, do it. Just do it. Last year, you didn't do it. This year, do it.
Yeah. And I think that this is where you lean on your pro scouting department. Hey, what's the free agency crop for wide receiver look like in 2026? Okay. Because we're going to roll over some cash probably either way. We'll have some money to spend. The cap is supposed to increase even more next year. So like, what are we looking at there? You could also talk about your college scouting department. What does that class look like? We all talk about the quarterbacks in 2026. That's only one pick, assuming they take a quarterback next year. You still have all these other draft picks. Is it deep in wide receiver? I don't know. The 2025 wasn't that deep, in my opinion, at wide receiver. They had some talented players, but it wasn't like in prior years. I think the Steelers have to be smart. And if they think that the future, meaning, okay, next year's free agent crop, next year's rookie class is going to be great, then maybe I get an Amari Cooper for 2025 and see what he can do if he has anything left. Or Keenan Allen, who had a pretty productive year last year, by the way, in Chicago. Or if I'm going to get a guy from Green Bay and trade for him, is he in the final year of his rookie contract? For instance, Romeo Doubs is. So you would basically be in the same situation you were with George Pickens, but someone that I know Jeremy Betts really likes, his name is Wick. He has 2 years left on his contract. So you would get him for another year if you trade and he's on his rookie year as well. So there's a lot of factors here to weigh in. I think we both agree, though, they're going to try come hell or high water to add another wide receiver as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, even if it's just for this year and you want to go bigger next year, I'm okay with that too. But it's so crazy because this morning was Pittsburgh Standard Time. Greg and I were talking about, we had a topic for the show. We were ready to roll and we were going to talk about, things to get excited about. My number one thing to be excited about for the Steelers for 2025 was, what is an offense going to look like that has two weapons like that you can't just double team one of them all the time? And it got smashed. So to me, that's why I'm so frustrated. I'm like, don't go back to how it was last year. Don't let the defenses get away with just being able to double DK. Right. Don't let them do and stack the box. Don't let them do that. You need to get another weapon. It wasn't good enough last year. It needs to be better for this year. Even if DK's better than George, you still give me that other threat. Give me that other weapon. That was something that I said at the very end of the season. I don't think Van Jefferson was a weapon. You need a weapon. We don't know could Roman Wilson be a weapon? Sure. Do we know anything about it? No.
And that's something we always say. We always say the same thing. We don't know how they view blank. Like, we don't know how they view Roman Wilson coming off of basically a red shirt year. We don't know how they view Calvin Austin taking another year of progression. We don't know how they view Ben Skoranek outside of special teams. Do they view him as an actual receiving threat? I don't know. I'm going to guess right now, no, but that's just a guess. So we'll see.
And if they do, I'm like, what are they thinking? You know what I mean?
Ben Skoranek can catch the football.
Oh, I know. And I mean, he was looking pretty decent. What was that? Was that the Ravens game that he got hurt or something where they were going to try to use him?
He caught like a 20-yard pass right out the rip, like right down the middle. I was like, hell, here, look at Dirtbag go.
Yeah.
That's his nickname, I guess. Dirtbag.
Yeah. Or do they feel like they'll finally have a quarterback that'll throw to the tight end? Maybe that's, I mean, you do have to admit that would be helpful with the Steelers passing game to utilize the tight ends more. I mean, if they want to use all these tight ends, they got to frickin' throw them the ball in order for them to really be able to help in that regard.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to talk about the offense today on the second half of the show, talking about running back Kaleb Johnson, which we'll do right after a word from our sponsors. For those listening on the audio form, for those watching live on any platform, we're not going anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, Steeler fans, thank you and welcome back. Thank you for being patient, I should say. And it is time to break down the second pick, the second selection, the third round pick of Kaleb Johnson out of Iowa. This was a pick that a lot of people, and we talked about Derek Hartman last week, and there were people that say, we got these three guys and they could go in any order. He went last. Doesn't mean he's worse. It just means he was last. I have read a lot of articles that thought that Kaleb Johnson was going to be selected in the second round, and that if he was going to go in the third, he was going to be early. Dave, were you expecting Kaleb Johnson? Because I know we're still in that realm where you were aware of these players because you wrote those articles for the website. And were you expecting him to be there for the Steelers in the third round?
I will tell you this. I knew next to nothing about Kaleb Johnson.
Okay.
I really didn't, because he was one of those guys that if the Steelers took him at pick 21, it would have been, what are you doing? And he was one of those guys that in no way, shape, or form should he be around for their third-round draft pick. I had a whole slew of players like that I just didn't bother, because why? Unless the Steelers make a trade, and that's what was so crazy when we did our mock draft simulator on the Scobro show. We made a trade and picked up another earlier third-round pick, and I was like, I'm not as familiar with these guys because this isn't the zone that I'm looking at. So it's crazy when we're going through the second round and we're in the bottom part of the second round, and I'm asking people on the live stream, all right, everybody, if the Steelers were to trade up now, what would you want them to be trading up for? And of course, Andrew Wilbar is saying Jalen Milroe. I already know enough about him just because of the possibility of that at 21, which I was hoping would be the case, but it wasn't, which was good. But Jeremy Betts kept saying, Kaleb Johnson. It was during the live chat is when I actually, the live show is when I actually started looking more at Kaleb Johnson.
Yeah.
That's when I really started paying attention to him. And that's why I'm like, okay, now I'm like, all right, the fact that but I still didn't believe he would necessarily be there by the time the Steelers got on the clock. So then by the time that they did, I'm like, well, I really hope they take this guy. This is someone who shouldn't be there. And it seemed like he fit what the Steelers needed. And that's the way I looked at running back the whole time when it came to the Steelers. I looked at who was considered the top couple guys to know if I thought it was worth taking them at 21. And I only had one player that I felt was worth taking at 21, and he went much higher than that. So beyond that, I was just kind of like, the Steelers are going to have to get that in the third or fourth round. So it's kind of whatever they think is going to be the best fit for them. So I started to really appreciate Kaleb Johnson more right before he was taken and immediately after he was taken when I was getting ready to do everything for the Breaking News podcast. So that's my initial thoughts on him. Was I hadn't even really considered him because I didn't think he was a player that was going to be there at that spot.
That's fair. It's a fair assessment. I'll give you a little trivia, Dave. Let's see how well you know your Steelers pre-draft visits.
Okay.
What were the top two positions in terms of how many players they brought in at those positions of the 30 official visits?
Defensive line and running back.
Which one trumped the other?
It was like one more. It was one. Was it one more defensive lineman?
Which one was it? It was one more, but which one was it?
I'm going to take the shot, and I could be wrong. I'm going to say it was one more defensive lineman.
Actually, one more running back.
One more running back? Yeah.
They brought in 9 running backs and 8 defensive linemen. Okay. And so when I was, and Jeremy did a great job writing up all those pre-draft visits, and then I put them in the tracker. And so I would read Jeremy's write-ups and stuff. But the one thing I noticed every time I did this was every single back was different. Like every single one brought a different skill set. You had the Omarion Hampton, then you had Kaleb Johnson, then you had the little like Travion Henderson, like from Ohio State. Then you had the other Ohio State running back who's a bruising type. And the more I read, I'm like, I think the Steelers are just trying to figure out, we're going to do our homework on all of them because we don't know when they're going to be available and when we're going to pick them. And when we pick them, we want to make sure we know what we're getting. And so once they selected Kaleb Johnson, I started to like, okay, I did like what you did. I started reading about him and everyone's saying, okay, first thing I see, which really made me cringe was Najee Harris 2.0. And I was I hate that. I saw it. It was on social media, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And so I started to talk with Coach Kevin Smith. Okay. He's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. And he's like, I'm going to do a film room, but this guy is not Najee Harris 2.0. I said, thank God. Okay. Can you he does the film room, which you can still find at steelcurtainnetwork.com. If you go on any article with Coach Kevin Smith under it, click his name, it'll take you to all his articles. And so you can easily access all his film rooms there. And his film room was really interesting on how this guy has the vision, the patience of Le'Veon Bell, but he doesn't have the burst of Le'Veon Bell. Mm-hmm. He gets to top speed quick, and then it doesn't look like he's necessarily running fast, but he does have some breakaway speed. He's not a burner, but I was impressed. And my next question for you, Dave, unless you want to add something to that. Do you want to add something to that before I ask you next question?
No, it's fine. You can have the next question. I'm good.
How do you see Kaleb Johnson in terms of stylistically fitting with the rest of the running back room and Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell?
All right. You mean like his progression through the season or
I'm not talking snap counts. I'm talking about how are they going to are they going to have him be a typical good third down back as a guy that's going to come in good pass protection? I've heard that's a knock on Kaleb Johnson, by the way. You can catch the ball in the backfield. Kaleb Johnson didn't do that a lot in college, but he can. He has the skills. Is he more of your, big guy, bruiser, short yardage? I can, or is he going to be that I'm going to tote the rock every down? It doesn't matter because I'm that workhorse. How do you see that playing out?
Okay. This is not a player comparison, just like I had to say with everything over and over again when I was talking quarterbacks during the draft, that I said it's not the skill comparison, it's a role comparison. When I was saying like a Landry Jones, I didn't want someone, it wasn't necessarily the skill. This is strictly role. To me, at least to start the season, I see him in the 2004 Jerome Bettis role. That he is the guy that that can pound it and everything else, and you're just saying we're running it and see if you can stop it. But he doesn't need to be the guy out there for all the snaps. I think that's going to be Jaylen Warren. Then maybe how it all goes and how it progresses, and can he pass protect? Can he catch? How much he can do. They might not want him. Might not even be. Hey, don't focus on that right now. We'll get to that. Make sure right now you're ready to do this. But honestly, right now, if you look at who's on the Steelers roster, if you could pick one running back to give the ball to on 3rd and 1, who would you pick?
Out of those three?
I mean, even anyone down the line, I don't care. You know what I'm saying?
I would want the big bruiser. I would want
Kaleb Johnson. Yeah. If it's 3rd and 1 and where it's going to be a running play, I would prefer him. Just because. But that doesn't mean that he's going to get the majority of action. I like the fact that typically when Jaylen Warren is on the field, you can't just sit there and decide, this is just going to be a run. It might be a bit of a telegraph early in the season when Kaleb Johnson is in the game.
Yeah.
But if you use him in the role that you kind of know they're running anyway, then who cares? There are certain, and then my goodness, you maybe run a play action pass bootleg and completely catch them off guard because you were really expecting to run. Then do that occasionally. Then there you go, keeping them the defense a little bit honest. But to me, I see him. If you're going to, a lot of times with the Steelers, especially non-first or second round draft picks, but sometimes even them, to start off, you ask them to do something small, and then you start getting them more involved with things, expanding from that, depending on the player and how much they can do. So that's why that would be how I would look at Johnson. Say, hey, be the guy that can just pound it up in there, and then you can expand that if he's ready for that as you go.
This is your own expectation. Do you expect him to get that expanded role by the end of the season?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
I'm going to say no. I don't expect him to.
Okay.
I don't expect him to, but I hope he does. Because if he does, then the Steelers really found something. I want it to work. I want every draft pick and every free agent to work out for the Steelers. They don't. They all don't. But that's not. But I've come into it looking that I want them to. I don't expect them to. I expect that to be something that maybe they feel like they could be ready. He could be ready for in year 2. But if he's ready for it in year 1, and oh my goodness, even and the earlier the better, that's great. But it's not like Najee Harris where they didn't have anybody else and they had to call on him right away all the time. I like that they don't have to do that. Maybe they end up having to do it because of injuries or whatnot, knock on wood, because you never know about that. But to me, going into the season with a plan of, hey, we don't have to run this guy a ton, but man, if he's really running it well, then we can do it. That's the attitude I want to see with the whole thing.
I agree with everything you said. I agree with that Jaylen Warren's going to get the brunt of the carries and that Kaleb Johnson's going to have a very unique set that he's going to run with, whether it's short yards, whatever. My question for you is, do you see Jaylen Warren being all of it? Like, okay, I'm taking over Najee's role, and does Kenny G, I laugh every time I say that. Does Kenny G, Kenneth Gainwell, take over what Jaylen Warren did last year? And do you think they'll, like, I'm trying to figure out, and this is not Kaleb Johnson, I apologize, but it's a running back question.
Oh, yeah. You got to figure out where he fits in everything.
Yeah. Where does Kenny G fit in all of this?
It's crazy because I had done stuff, even, unpopular opinion, the Steelers are fine at running back. If they wanted Kenny G to be the guy to back up Jaylen Warren, and they didn't get a day 1 or day 2 prospect at running back, I felt maybe they would add one in free agency. There's still some out there that could fill that 3rd and 1 role, but they weren't able to, which changes everything. Because now, to me, Gainwell is a Cordero Patterson upgrade, both in special teams and in however much you would want to use him in the backfield. I think that Jaylen Warren is going to do what Jaylen Warren had done in the past, but just more of it, but not to the extent that Najee Harris did. And then you're going to see Kaleb Johnson coming in and needing to do some stuff, but also not to the extent that Najee Harris did. I don't even know if I could even break down a percent, but I think Jaylen Warren is going to see a majority of the snaps, but it wouldn't surprise me if they almost even out sooner than later in carries, because Johnson will get carries on a more meaning, not just touches, carries, meaning running game, that he could see more carries per snap than what Jaylen Warren would.
Yeah. Now Tim Lyons asked this question, and I was thinking in my head as well. And the question is, and I struggle with this because really we only saw one season, and it was a very tumultuous isn't the right word. There were multiple quarterbacks with vastly different skill sets. And that the question is, Arthur Smith, is he going to be able to put all this together? You have 3 new running backs. Well, Jaylen Warren's not new. You have 3 running backs with very different skill sets, very valuable. An offensive line, well, I've talked about that enough. And now you have some new weapons on the outside, one mainly being DK Metcalf. Do you trust him to get it done in year 2 as the OC?
Well, they've made some changes on the offense. And when you make some changes in personnel, they made some changes last year, and then they're making some more changes this year. The more changes you make since you have an offensive coordinator in place, the more you would think that the offensive coordinator is on board with and are looking for these type of players. That's my hope. Now, whether that actually comes to fruition is a whole different story. So I'm hoping, why get DK Metcalf if Arthur Smith isn't going to figure out how to use him? Why draft Kaleb Johnson if Arthur Smith's not going to be able to figure out how to use him? Why tender Jaylen Warren and have him be, quote unquote, your guy to start the season if Arthur Smith's not going to know how to use him? So to me, it's like, if you're not doing that, then what the crap else are you doing? I mean, seriously.
That's true. That's a good point. Any other final thoughts on Kaleb Johnson before we get to some super chats? We talk a little rookie minicamp, and then we do some trivia. Do you have any final thoughts on him?
Final thoughts on Kaleb Johnson is he should get typical 3rd round pick treatment. And that is, if you're good and you're ready, let's get you involved. If you're struggling and it's too much for you, we'll cover it otherwise.
Yeah.
And because this is going to be tough for Steelers fans, because even though it's the infamous, Chase Claypool, even though he was drafted in the 3rd round, he was the Steelers' 2nd pick. So a lot of times he's going to feel like a 2nd round pick when really he was a 3rd.
Yeah, and we'll see. I think Kaleb Johnson has a bright future with the Steelers.
Yeah.
Can he break the dreaded running back streak? Dave, trivia time. Who was the last running back to earn earn and sign a second contract with the Steelers? Do you know?
Of course I know, because this was like a year and a half ago. I did this of trivia for you and Brian, and
I've known it for a while.
It's for Ron Haynes.
Where did he go to college?
That is a whole different story.
He's a Bulldog. He went to the University of Georgia.
Okay. He was there. You go. That was back. That was back before I followed Steelers drafts. So yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
But that's a lot. Think about that. There's people probably watching this, listening to this, that don't even know who Ron Haynes is. Yeah. I think he's still alive. He's number 34. Look him up. He was a good back, but he was the last running. Wasn't that the Cowher era, or was that in Tomlin?
No, I'm pretty sure that was Cowher. You gonna make me look it up?
Not that worried.
I'm probably gonna have to look it up. You look at what you're doing to me. When was he drafted?
Oh shoot! I'm gonna guess it was like 2000 and 2003 or 2002.
Right, you're gonna make me look it up.
Did you? Oh, Jeff. you thought I knew? No, I knew where he played college football.
Yeah, I forgot that there's 2 R's in Veron.
Yes,
he was drafted in 2002. Yeah,
I was right.
5th round, 2002. Oh, what's his middle name?
I have no clue. What is it?
Ulrich.
Ulrich?
Yeah, Ulric. Ulrich.
All right.
Ulrich Haynes. Okay.
Yep.
And did he play his entire career in Pittsburgh?
I don't think so.
No, he played 1 season. Was he hurt in 2008 or just out of the league? But in 2009, he played in Atlanta. So, yeah, his last year in Pittsburgh, he played 1 game in 2007. So he was Cowher era. He only played 1 game with Tomlin.
It's crazy to think about all the running backs that have been through the doors, and not one of them has signed a second contract. Everyone says, well, Le'Veon Bell was offered. Yes, he was offered, but he didn't sign it. He got franchise tagged.
Yeah.
That's not a contract. So
it's a second contract.
All right, let's do
these. Wait, I got one more. If you want to go over on Haynes here, I got one more. How many games did he start in Pittsburgh?
Start. I mean, that means he's on the field when the offense takes the first snap.
Yep.
2.
0. So the last running back to get a second contract wasn't even a starter.
No, he wasn't a starter. He was like that third down back, a good blocker.
Yeah, he was.
And then when he left, I think was when Mewelde Moore came in and he started taking over some of those duties. I liked Mewelde Moore. He was a good guy. But
I like that you said duties.
That Dookie reminds me of Najee Davenport. You don't know that story, look it up. All right. So we have some super chats here. Let's get Steeler Fan 69. Always likes to provide some dad jokes. He gives us $5. Thank you very much. Says Little Red Riding Hood found in critical condition. Paramedics have stabilized her condition, but she's not out of the woods yet. Very nice. Thank you very much for that. And then Kyle Smith asks us a question, gives us $5 and says, why trade Pickens before a plan of replacement? I expected a move already given they had weeks to prepare negotiating with the Cowboys. So there's a lot of assumptions.
That's a good point.
It is, but there's a lot of assumptions in that statement, a question by Kyle. The first being is that they had months to prepare. Or is that what he said? Weeks. I'm sorry, not months. Weeks to prepare. From what I've heard, and this is not from our source, but just gathered from different reports around the internet, is that the Steelers and Cowboys were talking before the draft and even during. The Steelers were looking for an early day 2 pick, and the best that the Dallas Cowboys would give is a 4th. Then I heard that they did not have negotiations up until this week. Now, who picked up the phone? I don't know. But whoever picked up the phone, it might have been on Sunday. That was when those negotiations started up again. And so I don't know if they had the weeks to prepare. Just because they spoke at the draft and communicated about a trade doesn't mean that everything is the same and they were able to put a plan in place. The Steelers could have left the draft thinking, we're going to go into the season with George Pickens if no one's going to give us what we think he's worth. The Dallas Cowboys come back with a 3rd. They think that's good enough. They do a pick swap later in the draft in 2027, and you got yourself a deal. Do I think they have a plan? I think they have a plan. Are they going to be able to execute the plan? After last season, I have my doubts. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you should have had an idea of what you would have done. You can't make the trade and not have an idea of what you think you could do with it. To react. I mean, I don't want to say react, but to fill out the room afterwards. You have to have an idea. I mean, my goodness, there's no way this front office looks back at the wide receiver situation from 2024 and said, you know what? We nailed that. We got that perfect. No, you didn't. And that was the criticism last year. They traded away Deontay Johnson and didn't have an answer. You know, whether they thought they were going to have Ayuk or all those other things, it never came about. So I understand the reason to want to have it lined up, but maybe there's other things going on. They better have had a clue of what they were going to do otherwise before pulling that trigger, with the only exception being, wait a second. That's one thing you have to, I'm going to miss George Pickens' production. Oh my goodness. And the whole idea of him and Metcalf out there together would have been, you know, although some people say they're the same player, just imagine both. You can't double both of them, you know, and if you do, somebody else is going to be running crazy. But at the same time, how many times do you have to think about, yeah, but is he even going to be there for you for that? Or is it going to be like Kansas City, where he wasn't even a factor in the game at all? And if things were coming up with OTAs, I don't know if he was planning to hold out. I don't know whatnot. If the Steelers felt like, oh my goodness, as soon as some of this other stuff comes out, this offer is only going to get worse and worse. We better take it now. But my goodness, they have pro personnel scouts. Isn't that Sheldon White, I think, that does that?
That is his role, yes.
Yeah, that they should have already had the Steelers a list of 5 to 10 guys as soon as and once if the phone rang coming from Dallas, by the time they hung up that call, Sheldon should have had them that list.
I guarantee he did.
Let
me ask you this question though, Dave. Do you believe, from an organizational standpoint, that addition by subtraction can be a factual statement?
Yeah.
I think I don't think that the trade of George Pickens had anything to do with talent.
No, because if it had to do with talent, why in the world would
you would never have parted ways with him, even though he had a very, very bad end of 2024. Like, awful.
But can your talent drain other parts of the team?
And would your talent have been and I hate to use this word, it gets overused, a distraction leading up to the season? What's he going to do at training camp? Does he want a new deal? If he does, is he going to hold out? Is he going to hold in?
Yeah.
What's he going to do? Is he going to even talk to anybody? And now you're seeing reports that teammates didn't really care for him. I talk about this on Friday's Let's Ride podcast, and I don't rip George Pickens if that's what you're thinking I'm going to do. I don't. He's a different guy. Like, there's no doubt about it. He is just a very unique.
We knew that from the night he was drafted.
He had a shiesty hood on, standing there looking like I don't even know what it is. Looked like a Sesame Street character or something. It was weird. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line is, I got to ask, it feels an awful lot other than asking to be traded. You've got all this talent, but you've got to get rid of the headache. I mean, I know you can list a number of receivers, but to me, I think of Antonio Brown because of the 3rd round and 5th round draft pick. Just like this, other than they're having to give a 6th up as well, and you have to wait a year for that 5th round draft pick. What was more of a gut punch? What was more devastating, knowing that Antonio Brown wasn't going to be part of the Steelers anymore, or knowing that George Pickens wasn't going to be part of the Steelers anymore?
They both were putting out the same vibes for me when they were getting ready to go out the door. Like, I got to be honest. Like, there was a part of me that's like, okay, that's done. Because that was when Antonio Brown, he was, what was it? Ronald Ocean. Didn't he create like an alter ego for himself and was talking to the media as another guy? Like, I remember when he was a young player and he was in the locker room with AB and he was interviewing other guys. He was fun and jovial. The dude went off the deep end before he was traded. And I felt George Pickens was kind of on that same track, if I'm being honest.
Well, I'll be honest with you. To me, I think the difference was when he was out there and it was practice time, was everything else. Nobody worked harder than Antonio Brown.
No one.
That's one thing. And I feel like his demise, you almost didn't see coming until the very end when he lost it. Didn't show up at the game, all that other, there in the fur coat, leaving it half, all those kind of things. So to me, his went from best wide receiver in the NFL to winning the game on Christmas Day, think all those great things that you think about, and then all of a sudden gone. That one to me was pretty tough. George Pickens, you kind of saw this the whole way throughout everything with him, because it wasn't like it was all of a sudden, boom, there it was, it's too much to handle. It was something you saw early and often with him, that he was just a different character in that regard.
Yeah, he was. We have some more super chats here before we get to trivia. Tim Lyons gives us $5. He's a Bengals fan. He's a contributor at Fans for Sports Network. Says, good luck to the Steelers. To you Steeler fans, truly wish you all a good season, regardless of the shenanigans happening. Thank you very much, Tim. You're one of the few that's a quality Bengals fan. Kyle Smith gives us another $5. Says, as a bigger meta issue, then why does this cycle keep happening in the Steelers building with wide receivers over and over and over again without fixes? I will say this. I have seen it. I can't say that Dave agrees with me. I have seen a focus, like almost a very fine focus on character being paramount since Omar Khan took over. Like when you look at that list, and it's been circulating social media, it's Martavis Bryant, it's Antonio Brown, it's Chase Claypool, it's Deontay Johnson, and now it's George Pickens.
Antonio Holmes.
Yeah.
It's Plaxico. Now, Plaxico Burst, they didn't trade. They just let him. They just didn't re-sign him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,
it's I'm not crapping on Kevin Colbert. What I'm saying is that I don't think that Omar Khan is making talent. Like those picks were, Martavis Bryant was a 4th-round draft pick. The guy, if he didn't have issues, would have been a 1st-round draft pick. They took a flyer on, and it didn't pan out. Yeah. Chase Claypool, Lord knows what happened with that guy. 2nd-round pick, has an unbelievable rookie year, and then just can't get out of his own way. You look at all these. I hope, I can't say for certain, that Khan is going to do things different always. It just seems like in the short amount of time, very small sample size, he's approaching it differently than past regimes have.
Yeah, and see, here's the one thing you've also got to remember. Like I said, I don't like throwing people under the bus. Like him, don't like him, say it's great, say it's not. All of these, the one thing that's in common with all of these choices, all of these players that were drafted, it's not even, you can say the name Rooney, but I mean, it was Dan Rooney early on, and it was Art Rooney later. The only name that's in common with all these that are drafted, it wasn't even Tomlin. It's Cowher and Tomlin. It's Colbert is the only thing that all of these ones that have kind of flaked out on them have in common. If you're going to include, even Burris and Holmes in there. So,
yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, Dave, you just got to call a spade at times.
Yeah.
You just have to do it. So,
there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of layers here, a lot of different factors. So we're running low on time. Let's get to some trivia. Okay.
Well, first of all, I was going to kind of dunk on Brian. For those of you that came late, were asking Brian. He had other places, other obligations he had tonight. But I was going to kind of dunk on him, but not because I don't think it was this past week's. Here we go, Sean. I think it was the week before. He had said something. I was going to bring up this question and I was going to let you dunk on Brian. Where he said the Steelers double dipped from 2 different colleges. When's the last time they've done that in the draft, if they ever have? Hey, Jeff, before 2025, when was the last time the Steelers double dipped from 2 colleges in the same draft?
Did they do it last year?
Almost.
Oh, okay.
It was the year before. It was 2020. Brian's talking about. Yeah, it was because it was 2 from Georgia and 2 from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So then I was going to turn around and give a wheelhouse answer for Brian, which now I think is a really good one just for you, Jeff. All right. So we're talking Kaleb Johnson. What is Kaleb Johnson's jersey number that was just assigned to him?
20.
20. Who was the last offensive player to wear the number 20 for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the game?
Holy cow.
Offensive.
Do you have that list?
Yeah, I have the list.
Where does Amos Zaraway wear 20?
Let's see. I'm looking back. Zaraway was not 20. He was. Okay. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I thought he had 2 in there. Maybe I was wrong.
I know. I'm pretty sure he had a 2, but he wasn't 20.
The last, because I'm just keep on thinking of defensive backs.
Yeah.
It was last year was Cam Sutton. Or that was Patrick Peterson, I think.
You're correct. It hadn't been worn for a while between.
Dwayne Washington was 20. I know that.
That is correct, but he's not the sorry. Yeah, there
was a 20 before that. This is just my childhood.
Brian McFadden, we knew he was. That's why Peterson took it, right?
That's right. His cousin.
Yep.
I cannot think of the last player up. Amos was 21. Thank you guys in the live chat. Jared Devil said Jordan Todd.
I don't know if that's the case. He didn't appear again. Yeah, if that's the case, he did not appear in a regular season game. That's
Pittsburgh Toddy says Eric Pegram.
Eric Pegram is a fantastic answer, but he's the next one. He's the next one back.
So there's
Pegram in 95, 96.
There's one earlier.
There's one since him.
Huh.
I'll give you a hint. Okay. It was a running back. It was only one season. And in that season, he had 25 carries for 49 yards and 1 touchdown.
What year was this?
I didn't give you a year. So that's a 2-yard average.
How much?
And that year was 2012.
2012?
Yep.
I remember Todman now. Whoever said Todman, because he was the Jordan Todd. I think he might have meant Todman, because Todman got brought in one of those years where they had all those injuries at running back, and he probably didn't get a carry.
No,
I'm drawing a blank here, Dave. You got to tell me.
Okay, you ready? It's not Charlie.
Oh, is it Batch? It's he was the artist, Baron Batch.
Baron Batch.
There it is. And he played at Texas Tech.
This is according to Pro Football Reference. If there's someone else
Texas
in there.
Tech?
Yeah. Let's see. I just had him here. He was. How do you know? What are you paying attention to colleges for now? Yeah, but you are correct. Texas Tech. He was a 7th-round pick in 2011. Appeared in 12 games in 2012.
And he shattered his leg. Tried to come back. Wasn't able to. Retired, and then he's actually a very successful artist.
Artist in the Pittsburgh area. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. He has 1 career touchdown.
20. Yeah, that's crazy. That's always a DB number. Now that you bring it up, that's interesting.
So I found that intriguing.
Yeah,
but you go back a little bit. Dwight Stone was also number 20. That was a big one, and of course the big one, going back even further, was of course Rocky Bleier.
Yeah, some people are saying like D'Angelo Williams and Mendenhall, they wore the same number. They were 34. Yeah.
So good guesses. The Todman. I'm sorry, I gotta look him up. Well, I want to know what number he was.
He wasn't 20. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Terry Richards says Jeff lies about watching college football. No, when these guys are playing, if I'm covering the team, I have to look up pictures of them from their college, and I remember like the helmets, and I remember that stuff. I don't watch college football. Trust me.
I get why people thought that with Todman. He was 30, not 20.
30.
So yeah, he was 30.
Jared Devil was right. He said could have been 30.
Yeah, I wasn't looking there, but I will tell you this: Baron Batch, or if you really want to sound all sophisticated, you could call him by his full name, Baron Von Batch.
Oh, that's like when Antoine Blake changed his name to Valentino.
Yes,
Valentino Blake.
I mean, like that.
My neck with my lips on my neck. Anyways, Dave, why don't you give some final thoughts?
Oh, final thoughts. This is a tough week for Steelers fans. After you come off the high of the draft, it just seemed like it was it was a gut punch. And this is one of those that's so tough with this trade because you're like, it's not a trade that made the Steelers a better on the field product. It didn't. Now, it might have made the Steelers a better locker room, and those are harder things for fans to see. I know there are some fans that were like, they needed to get rid of him while they could. There are plenty of fans who are like, why do you trade away that talent? You're right back in the same spot where you were last year. And I agree with that. I agree with both of those. And honestly, it kind of sometimes depends on who's asking me on which way I want to go. I am really torn about how to do that. So that's why it's been a tough week for Steelers fans. So all I have to say is I'd love to be able to say, oh, you got to trust them. There's got to be something coming, because we were here a year ago and it really never came. So I get it. I'm in the same boat as you all. I really want to see it. I can't completely trust that something else is going to happen to not make it to be the situations that we talked about before with the Steelers wide receivers and therefore affecting their entire offense. But man, oh man, hopefully it comes and then I can have something more to get excited about.
All right. Well said. I will say, everyone check out steelcurtainnetwork.com. And I was very happy with the Let's Ride podcast that I've already recorded because of this show for tomorrow. And I talk about George Pickens. Jeremy Betts joins me, but I also give people 5 reasons why they should be tracking and paying attention to rookie minicamp, which starts tomorrow, Friday, going through Sunday. So you want to check it out. And they're tangible things. It's not like, well, let's see what the rookies look like in a black and gold helmet. That's not it. So go check out that's only on your audio only feed. Search Steel Curtain Network. But good show, Dave. Brian will be back next week for this schedule release. Why don't you send us out like you always do?
Hey.
We'll see you next Wednesday. Take it easy, everyone.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.